Hello and welcome, Claire Atteck here, and I am delighted that you are joining me for the final part 3 of my video training series to give you a little bit of an update about the financial support measures available from the government to support your business if you are suffering adversely from the effects of coronavirus. So in part 1, we talked about some of the general support measures available to small business owners, including the loans and also the HMRC Time to Pay service. We also talked about the grant available to self-employed people, sole traders, that is available to some of you to help you out in your business. Part 2, we started talking about the support available if you complete a self-assessments form. We also talked about the deferral of the VAT payment from last year and the treatment of that going forward. And also we talked about some of the reliefs available on business rates for those who have a business premises. So in this final part 3, we're going to be talking about some of the support available specifically for limited companies and also for anybody who has employees on a PAYE system, some of the support packages available for you too. So here is a summary of the support available depending on your individual circumstances in terms of your own business. We've talked already in parts 1 and 2 about the support available to all businesses, self-employed sole traders, those who complete self-assessment, VAT registered businesses and businesses with premises. And today in part 3, as I mentioned, we'll be talking about the support available to limited companies and also those businesses with employees under a PAYE scheme. So firstly, the support available to limited companies. Now, if you are a limited company, you will be making submissions to Companies House on an annual basis. Now, to allow companies to focus on operating and surviving rather than dealing with the burden and expense of submitting their accounts, Companies House have applied a 3-month extension to allow you a little bit more time to get your accounts done. So if you've not previously extended your deadline and you've not shortened your accounting period, then that 3-month extension will apply to you if your accounts were originally due between the 27th of June 2020 and the 5th of April 2021 inclusive. The extension has been automatically applied, but I would strongly advise you to check on the Companies House Service website just to make sure that the dates are in line with what you think so that you're not getting any late submission penalties. Now, also for limited companies, you will be paying corporation tax on any profits. So there is actually no official guidance from HMRC regarding extension of the tax return submission in line with the extension of the submissions to Companies House. But it is understood generally that this should fall under HMRC's Time to Pay service. Now, this is something we spoke about in part 1, so if you missed that, check back to part 1 to learn a little bit more about the Time to Pay service. So generally it's worth, if you are concerned at all about your tax return or your ability to pay your corporation tax bill, then do be proactive and contact HMRC as soon as you can to discuss what your options are. So if you are a business who employs staff under a PAYE scheme, then you will probably already be familiar with the Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme, the CJRS. The scheme has been in place from very early on in the pandemic, but recently it has been now extended. Originally it was due to finish on the 31st of October. It has now been extended to the 31st of March 2021. So for the period from the 1st of November to the 31st of December, you are eligible to claim up to 80% of your employee's usual pay per month to a maximum of £2,500. The period that will cover from January to March 2021, the level of cover has not yet been announced. For those who are familiar with this scheme, you will recognise that the scheme has the same setup as it was in August 2020. So part-time working is allowed. So if you are able to give your employees an element of their normal work, then you can do so and pay them accordingly. But this scheme covers any hours that you're not able to give them. And as an employer, you will need to pay the national insurance and pension contributions for your employees. So again, this is very similar to the setup as it was in August 2020. Now, if you have made staff redundant on or after the 23rd of November 2020, you are actually allowed to rehire them and place them on the furlough scheme. So if you have made them redundant, then do think about bringing them back onto the books to get them on that furlough scheme. In terms of eligibility eligibility criteria. I won't go through it in a fine-tooth comb. If you've already used the scheme and you're familiar with it, there haven't been any major changes in terms of eligibility criteria. Have a look at the gov.uk website in terms of the calculations and the criteria, and that will give you some guidance. Now, just to note, you can start using the scheme now even if you've not used it before. However, you will still be subject to that eligibility criteria, so it's not for any new employees who've come onto your books. They need to have been employed previously, pre-lockdown, but you can actually start claiming on the scheme even if you've been able to give your employees work up to this point. So the next area to look at is the statutory sick pay refunds if you do have employees within your business. Now, this will entitle you to a full refund of up to 2 weeks worth of statutory sick pay for eligible employees. Now, the emphasis here is on eligible employees. An eligible employee is defined as someone who either has coronavirus symptoms themselves, is living with someone with coronavirus symptoms, is shielding or is isolating and ahead of upcoming surgery. Please note, this excludes those returning from a country where they've been required to quarantine. And also, quite critically, it excludes those who are unable to work because they are looking after a child who is isolating. That is, of course, unless the above criteria is met. So if, for example, you are looking after a child who has coronavirus symptoms or has tested positive, then that is permitted on this scheme. If you are unable to work because you are looking after a child who's been sent home from school because somebody in their bubble has tested positive, that does not meet this criteria. You are required to keep records for 3 years. Now, please note that you don't need a GP fit note for this. The government do not want everybody going to their GP and wasting their time getting fit notes in terms of the coronavirus symptoms. However, you do need to keep your own records in terms of the timing of the absence, the reason for the absence, the length of absence, and so on. It gives you an idea that it's likely that there might be checks made on this if you're having to keep the records for so long. Please note as well that you can make more than one claim per employee, but the total amount of claim that you make must not exceed that 2-week period. So if you've got an employee who's off for 1 week and then at a later point is off for another week, that will count. But if they take subsequent time off under the statutory sick pay scheme, then this will no longer be covered. Please note as well that you can claim the Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme payment, CJRS, for the same employee, but obviously not during the same period of time. So they are either furloughed and not able to work for you, or they are on sick leave. They can't be the same at the same time. So it's one or the other, but you can claim both schemes for an employee. So I just wanted to mention finally a couple of schemes that have been talked a lot about in the media that you are probably familiar with the names and can't quite work out where they have gone. So these schemes have now been postponed or suspended. So the first one is the Job Support Scheme, or JSS. This was due to commence on the 1st of November, but on the 31st of October, when the new national lockdown was announced and the continuation of the Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme was announced, the Job Support Scheme has now been put on hold. So that one is no longer in place, so you don't need to worry about that one at the moment. Unfortunately for employers, the other thing that has now disappeared, I don't know whether it will or will not come back, is the job retention bonus. So the government announced that there will be a one-off bonus to employers for all employees kept on payroll following furlough until the 31st of January 2021 of £1,000 per employee. There were a few conditions attached to that. Unfortunately, they have announced this will definitely no longer be paid in February as planned due to the extension of that Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme. But I know a lot of small businesses were relying on that payment, and we just need to keep fingers crossed that hopefully that is a delay rather than a cancellation, but that's not quite clear yet. So this is something I've mentioned throughout all of the parts, part 1, part 2 and part 3 of the training series, and that is the HMRC Time to Pay service. So I just wanted to pop it here again just at the end of the presentation to give you a quick reminder. So obviously HMRC is very aware that people are pressured in terms of their cash flow. They're finding things difficult, so they would rather that you contact them, discuss your own financial position and come up with affordable monthly payment options rather than just sticking your head under the desk, ignoring it and hoping it will go away, which for note, it won't go away, unfortunately. The time to pay service is assessed on a case-by-case basis. Typically, HMRC will never require you to pay more than 50% of your disposable income towards a tax bill. So make sure that you are having these open conversations with them. Some of the payment plans you can actually set up online. You don't even need to speak to them. Others you will need to call HMRC. But the bottom line, if you're worried about your ability to pay, always be proactive. Speak to HMRC, and this will help you get plans in place that makes it more affordable and also to avoid any penalties. So in summary then, today in part 3 we have covered the support applicable to limited companies in terms of the extension of the Companies House submissions and the possible extension of corporation tax, although you will need to discuss this with HMRC directly. We've also covered the support available to those who employ individuals through PAYE, so your coronavirus job retention scheme and the statutory sick pay refunds. And we've also discussed those schemes that seem to have disappeared, the job support scheme and the job retention bonus. And that is it. Well done for making it to the end. If you've watched all 3 parts, then bonus points to you. I hope you have found it helpful and that you're now a little bit more aware about some of the financial support that is available to you. I would add that if you are experiencing any difficulty at all, try and confront that difficulty before it becomes a major problem. Talk to HMRC, go and investigate those loans and financial packages available before your business sinks. It's really important to be proactive with this and get the help that you need. I also want to stress that the guidance around the finance packages available gets updated very, very regularly. So please do go and check with the government website, with your own professional advisors, in terms of the financial support available and those fine details, because they do change very frequently. So thank you for joining me, and if you've got any questions at all, please do come and join me over in the private Facebook group Financial Growth for Small Business Owners, and I will be there to help you. The slides accompanying this presentation are also available to download. I'll pop a link again in the comments for you to get hold of that. So if you've got any queries, any questions at all, get in touch. Thank you for joining me. Take care, stay safe, and bye for now.